Hey guys, in this video I will be going over what Rett syndrome is, how it's diagnosed, what causes it, and some basic genetics behind the disorder. If you don't know what Rett syndrome is or has never heard of it, this is the video for you. Okay, let's take a look at what exactly Rett syndrome is. So, Rett syndrome is an autism spectrum neurodevelopmental disorder. It is under the same category as autistic disorder, Asperger's disorder, childhood disintegrative disorder, and, well, there we have, Rett. They all display very similar symptoms. Those with Rett syndrome present abnormal neuronal functioning. They struggle with impaired motor skills such as writing things down and building things. They also struggle with developmental motor skills. Some other symptoms that patients show includes loss of hand movement, smaller growth of the head, intense staring, cold hands and feet, irritability, sleep problems, anxiety, abnormal curvature of the spine, and seizures. Okay, let's take a look at the history behind Rett syndrome, the scientists who discovered it, and giving Rett its name. So, here's Europe, over 50 years ago, and you have two men, Andreas Rett, a neurodevelopmental pediatrician, and Bent Hagberg, a neurologist. Both observed similar features of Rett, but wasn't sure exactly what it was. Later, in 1981, Rett and Hagberg decided to call the disorder Rett syndrome, and that's basically how the name and discovery came about. Now let's take a look at some of the genetics behind Rett syndrome. Don't be alarmed by the word genetics. This might seem out of your comfort zone, but don't worry, we'll go over it step by step. When we talk about genetics, we usually think of maybe the cell, the chromosome, and our genes. And for Rett syndrome, we will be zooming into chromosome X. I hope by now you know that chromosome X is a sex chromosome. Rett syndrome is not located on chromosome X, but the gene that causes Rett syndrome is. And what gene is that? Well, it's a gene called MECP2, which codes for a protein called methyl CpG binding protein 2. Don't worry, you don't really need to remember the name. All you really need to know is that Rett syndrome is caused by a single gene mutation on the X chromosome. Let's dig a little bit deeper into the methyl binding protein 2. So here we have the MECP2 gene that the protein is made from. When there is no mutation, we get a normal functioning protein that does its correct job. And shown on the right, we have a mutated gene, which therefore makes an abnormal protein that can't function correctly and therefore leads to Rett syndrome. So this methyl binding protein is responsible for a number of things in the body. It's kind of a complicated protein, but it mostly resides in the nucleus of the cells. When it's not mutated, it plays a role in maintaining proper brain function and development of nerve cells. Now that you know a little bit more about what causes Rett syndrome, let's take a look at who exactly gets Rett syndrome. Because it's located on the X chromosome, girls are more prevalent with the disorder than boys. About 1 in every 10,000 girls are born with Rett syndrome, and symptoms don't start to develop until the age of 6 to 18 months of age. Let's look at some of the treatment that patients with Rett syndrome can get. While there is no cure for Rett syndrome, there is treatment to help those diagnosed with the disorder. There are medications that can help relieve seizures, muscle stiffness, problem with breathing and gastrointestinal tract. Other things such as physical, occupational, and speech-language therapy also help children with Rett syndrome. And there we have it, Rett syndrome. Remember, it's different than other disorders in that it's a genetic disorder, which means that it's caused by one mutation on one gene. Thanks for watching.